Okay. Stuti. So that's thank you in Sinhala.
Nice to start with. Congratulations for the new book and welcome to Goa
Thank
Art
you.
and Literature Festivals.
It's great to be here. My favorite state in India, it's by a long shot.
N- Now that you are saying it's a favorite state of India, I would like to know the before we go for the dissimilarity. What is the similarity between the Colombo, the Sri Lanka, and the Goa that you find?
Okay. There's a lot of things that Sri Lanka and Goa have in common. So if you go to the southern coast of Sri Lanka, you could just close your eyes and you could think that you're actually in Goa because the
Totally.
landscapes are very similar. And the music, there's a form of music which was handed down by the Portuguese and blended with local styles called baila. So in baila, there was this very famous song that in Sri Lanka that everybody knows, Surangani. How many people know Surangani? Surangani Tamaliganawa. So I heard that there was a Konkani variant as well. Silon Manohar put in a few lines in Konkani as well when he heard about the success. So culturally, there are links, and we have to remember that when the Portuguese were here, for a lot of that period, the coastal cities, coastal parts of the island, were administered, from here, from Goa. So, but what happened was there also has been divergence because the Dutch came and evicted the Portuguese from their possessions in Sri Lanka. And unfortunately, you don't have these beautiful whitewashed church facades in southern Sri Lanka, which has a strong Catholic population. But the Dutch destroyed all of them and tried to force people to become Protestants. So because of that, a lot of the Portuguese heritage was lost. What does remain are a lot of Portuguese surnames with a Sri Lankan twist. For example, Fernandes in Sri Lanka is Fernando. De Souza is De Zoiza. You have a Dimel. So I try and just connect these things with certain food like bibinka in Goa.
Yes.
In Sri Lanka, well, there's a sweet dish called bibinkam, and I thought that it's the same thing, but it's not. It's something different. They said, "Oh no!" What I did was last year I took some bibinka from Goa to Sri Lanka, and we tried to compare the dishes, but they weren't the same thing.
So when you were talking about that Portuguese influence, then the Dutch came, and uh, you want to also speak about Anthony Vaz, what? Yeah.
Saint Joseph
Yeah.
Vas.
Yeah.
So Sri Lanka's patron Catholic saint. He actually saved Catholicism. He was a Goan, and he's the only Goan. Sorry, he was the only Sri Lankan to attain sainthood. So he went in the 17th century to Kandy, and he's a patron saint there. So that's something that really links Sri Lanka and Goa. And my Sri Lankan Catholic friends are very proud of this connection, and they say that we're able to maintain our culture, customs, and traditions because of this. But just one thing I also want to add with those Portuguese sounding names in Sri Lanka, unless the first name is Christian sounding, they're probably Buddhists. So Pereira, like people who are very close to me, Pereira family, they're Buddhists. So they have like Pavitra Pereira, for example, or Prasad Pereira. So many people they converted back to Buddhism when an order of Thai monks called Siam Nikaya came to. Believe it or not, it was the Nayak Hindu rulers, the Madurai Nayaks, who actually invited these monks from Siam to help revive Buddhism there.
This Thailand.
Yes, they came and they helped revive because what people believe was it came from through Ashoka's son Mahinda, as they call him, Mahindra here. Was completely, almost completely wiped out.
So coming a little bit to the near history, like when I was reading a book, it was said that you mentioned that coffee planters were the one who started their railway lines to move their produce. Like
Right.
similarly in India also, like in Northeast, the tea planters have like put their own money and created that railway line. In fact, Tezpur railway station is also built by the planters' money, and then they have given it to the government. Like those are the very similarities that I could find there.
Yeah, the slight difference here, though, the planters had so much influence there and so much money that they lobbied the British to construct the railways and the Colombo port, which I mentioned this in the introduction. So what happened was they really wanted, it wasn't just coffee. It was also rubber. There were other commodities. In fact, the plantation economy began with the Dutch, who, if you see the coastline of the beautiful west coast from Colombo all the way to Gaul, it was the Dutch who made sure that coconut trees were planted there. And it looks like they did a lot of similar work in Kerala. So, but the plantation economy grew so much that because of that, they needed a bigger port, first of all, to a modern port to, just transport those commodities. And they chose Colombo over Gaul, which is traditionally, which was the most important port. It was a major port for a long time because it was at the southern end of the island,
Okay.
but they chose Colombo for this. So there was a big role. They lobbied, but the money came from the British Parliament.
Also, then talking about the book, no, that Colombo, I always thought you will be writing about that Russian Moscow and Sakhalin, all these things. Like, so
I was
how
waiting to be called a Kremlin agent, which I'm not.
yes, like how did suddenly Colombo came up about? Like, what is the connection? Like, how did you?
Okay,
Yeah,
so actually, the books I wrote about Russia were written in Colombo because it's a very peaceful place,
right.
especially after the end of the Civil War. No, I kid. I have been going to Sri Lanka since 2003. Been going there every year. And the first time I went there, I fell in love with the culture, the people, the Sinhalese language. And it was a place that gave me immense joy. It's so beautiful, and people are always ready to smile. They don't just smile at foreigners or strangers. I've noticed the way the Sinhalese people, they communicate with each other. There's such a warmth in it. So I fell in love with that culture, and I started going there regularly till the point where it would be the place that I would spend my New Year every single year. This year I didn't go because I was waiting for this book to be released so I could take it there and not have two trips. But I absolutely, all the cultures there, the burger culture, the burgers are like our Anglo Indians, people who have Dutch and Portuguese and British ancestry. The burger culture, the Tamil culture there are several different Tamil cultures there. Like the Tamil that you hear in Sri Lanka. Well, you look like a Sri Lankan Tamil today with those glasses. I say that right, Machant, Michael?
But
So the Tamil you hear spoken in the hill country is closer to what you hear in Tamil Nadu, where those workers went from. In Jaffna, it sounds closer to Malayalam, and in the Muslims have their own dialect with some Arabic words, and sometimes it's difficult to understand this. So the various cultures within Sri Lanka, it is also a multi-ethnic, multicultural country, and they've always looked up to India. Well, at least the intellectual elite, for them, they said, look at the way India manages its diversity, so many languages, so many different cultures. It's only of late that they've started thinking, India is kind of uh, starting to look like we did at some point.
so, talking about it, Mahatma Gandhi also said Sri Lanka is a glorified version of India.
He did. Mahatma Gandhi really fell in love with Sri Lanka. He was there in 1927. He spent 3 weeks there, and he was so impressed. According to Mahatma Gandhi, at that time, Colombo was much better than Cape Town. He just spoke to the municipality, said that this is what you can do to make it even better and stand out and be as good as any city in the world. He noticed this is something that I guess he picked up from Ananda Kumaraswamy, the Tamil intellectual, who also said that Sri Lanka has preserved a lot of things, facets of Indian culture that you don't see in India anymore. So Gandhiji was very impressed with these things. But one thing he was shocked with that he expected Sinhalese Buddhists to be vegetarians and to not drink alcohol. I think more than vegetarianism, it's the alcohol that annoyed the living daylights out of him. And when he actually went up to Jaffna, there was a pamphlet that was being distributed, apparently written by supposedly an Indian Tamil, mocking Gandhi and saying, "You people eat curd rice, and this is not the way to enjoy life." So it's there in the book.
And your book has so many personalities. You have wrote about Arthur Conan Doyle, you Mark Twain,
Right.
and how did you choose these personalities to write about? Like Emperor Hirohito is there.
Yeah, so the first thing is you read about books from the past, and it's always Western white man's perspective. And it's almost like we learn about other parts of the world, through their impressions, through their ideas. So what I knew, since Colombo was part of the global east to west highway, so that began from Yokohama, Singapore, Penang, and then of course Colombo, and then moving further eastward to Aden and beyond. So there were people that came from many parts of the world: Japanese visitors, Chinese not so much, because the country was in a bad state in the 19th century. But I wanted to have as many different perspectives of people. So there are a couple of American women. We have Hirohito when he was the crown prince. We have King Chulalongkorn of Thailand and his son. The essay is about his son, but I also mentioned, because the Thai king also visited. There's, like you mentioned, Hirohito, then Gandhiji, and Anton Chekhov.
Yeah, Anton Chekhov. Don Bradman.
Don Bradman, yes. I mean, Don Bradman also really enjoyed playing in Ceylon, and I don't want to give away too much, but he had his first.
Give us some
drink.
anecdotes. Give us some funny ones.
Okay, you want to hear something funny, since people found Gandhiji's views a little funny now. So my favorite anecdote in this whole book was this incident where Gandhiji was invited for a women's meeting, and he expected there'll be thousands of working class women in the heart of Colombo, and he can address them on the need to spin your own clothes and things like that. He ended up in a nice bungalow in Cinnamon Gardens, Colombo 7, as this area is known as. And there were 12 women there, and they were extremely posh. And he was initially disappointed. He said, "This is a women's meeting." He stood up and he was about to leave, and then he sat down again. And then he decided to give them a lecture. And he said that, when there are so many poor people in the hill country, they're starving. Why are you wearing such expensive jewelry? You should donate these jewels so that the money can be used to uplift your country folk. And that wasn't enough. He went on. He said, if I was a woman, I wouldn't dress to impress a man like this. So he was also talking about
These are all documented.
It's all documented, because K.S. Manilal, who traveled with him, documented this, and those women sat in stunned silence. They didn't know what to say, because they didn't want to be rude to the Mahatma. Everybody was talking about him when he was there for 3 weeks. And they just sat there, and then I just thought, okay, this is 1927, and I know the kind of people who would have, who live in Colombo 7 now, and I started visualizing the faces of my posh friends and acquaintances just sitting there and listening to the Mahatma and not knowing what to say.
And another one I liked about that mango trick of Arthur Conan Doyle.
Oh, the great mango seed trick. I mean, I don't want to describe this in detail, but Arthur Conan Doyle obviously he had a very analytical mind. I mean, he wrote Sherlock Holmes. So he almost got fooled by it. And you can read about that exact trick. It's not there apparently it's an art that's dead in Sri Lanka, but at one time you had snake charmers, and you had this mango seed trick where a tree would come out. And he figured it out in the end, but it's something, apparently there's someone in Kerala who still does this. So he can still fool people with that. But among other people who visited, and there are plenty of these little anecdotes when you go through the archives and you see them, or when you see people's writing, you just burst out into laughter. And sometimes you're in a library just looking at a book, and you want to just laugh really loudly, but then so many serious looking people sitting there.
Then talking about these legends, these myths, and actual facts. How do you filter through it? Like, what is the process to find out
Okay.
this is the actual truth? This is what you want to write about.
You know, can you guess who I would say, the subject of the biggest number of myths from any of the personalities that I've described? Any guesses, anyone? Okay, Anton Chekhov. Every family has some Anton Chekhov story. And not only about the funny thing is, when Chekhov came in 1890, he was not a famous writer. He wasn't a famous playwright. He was returning from Sakhalin Island where he went on a medical mission. So he wasn't famous, but people say, "Oh, I was at the port when his ship came. I got off," and two hotels are fighting to claim that he stayed with them. So there's one, the Face Hotel says Chekhov stayed here. The Grand Oriental says Chekhov stayed here, and the Russian embassy, not wanting to offend either, said yes, he stayed here and there. But the fact is, he spent 2 nights there. He couldn't have possibly one night in one of those Colombo hotels, one night in Kandy. We know for a fact. So there's so many myths about this and about Bradman stories. Everybody, oh my, my great grandfather went to the Pisara Oval to watch Bradman play, and he scored a century. No, he didn't. you know, so quite a lot of these funny stories, and I don't know. I hope I didn't offend people, but then also another thing that I noticed here was the story with the Temple of the Tooth, because there's a belief the Portuguese told people that they snatched that tooth, brought it here to Goa, smashed it. And but the Sri Lankans say, no, 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 that was the wrong tooth. We hid the right tooth in Jaffna, and the right tooth is so it was a fake tooth that was smashed here in Goa, but the real tooth, they claim this. But when many people went to and saw the tooth, some people said, that looks like a horse's tooth. It is just that big. I haven't seen the real tooth. So you've seen it, okay? And I fully respect the beliefs of the Buddhist people, and it is sacred for them. And Russian philosopher Nikolai Rerik went to see it as well. And there's so many stories behind that tooth, because the king of Thailand, Chulalongkorn, they showed him the tooth and he said, "Can I just hold the box that's with the tooth?" And the monk said, "No." And he said, "Why not?" And they had a fight, and then he walked out, and he never forgave Sri Lankans for that. So whenever Sinhalese monks went to his palace in Bangkok asking for some relics or for some favors or something, he just
Discussed him.
he would do it, but he was so angry he cancelled whatever functions that were set up for him in Kandy, and because of this, so it's contentious.
So, with all these stories, do you have a favorite one that you want to speak about out of all these?
I wrote about a Belgian traveler called Jules Leclerc, and I it he was an intrepid traveler he was one of the founders of the Belgian Geographical Society, and he's completely forgotten because he wrote in French. One of his books was translated into English by the University of Missouri, but other than that, nobody knows. So he wrote this book, Un séjour dans l'île de Ceylon,
What is that?
a journey in the island of Ceylon, and he traveled much more than anyone else, extensively traveled. Went to places like Anuradhapura, which is now a very popular tourist destination. And so it was something that when he traveled there, he was actually somebody who was a pathbreaker. And I enjoyed reading his travelogue a lot because he just explored the island better than anyone else, because he wasn't there on, it wasn't just a port of call for him. He specifically came there to explore the island. And there's so much there in French. It's, I hope someone translates the entire book because it's a very valuable document. But I immensely enjoyed working on that.
Then, talking about how many languages you speak.
I speak a few. I
Then,
don't want to
then
get
how did you manage with the translations? You must be
okay.
like
Yeah.
Thai,
Okay.
Greek,
Yes,
all
I
these
don't.
stuff,
I
no?
don't speak Thai. So Chulalongkorn's son, that's Chakrabong, his granddaughter was a very accomplished, wonderful writer by the name of graceful woman by the name of Nerissa Chakrabong. So she helped me with the translations. With the Japanese, with Hirahito, I managed to contact the Sainsbury Institute in the UK,
Okay.
and they sent me certain documents which were in Japanese. I tried desperately to find a Japanese translator, couldn't. Found a Japanese man who was a manager at a restaurant, got
Sweet.
his help, and then finally I got someone to verify all this was true. And I also wrote about Orabi Pasha, who was the prime minister of Egypt. And when the British took over Egypt, they first gave him the death penalty, and then uh, they put him in exile. So he was in Ceylon for almost 20 years. So a lot of the Arabic documents, I had help from somebody with the archives, and everything's there in the acknowledgments. But French, Russian, Sinhala, those things I didn't have any problem. Hmm.
Great.
Thank you.
So, because if you have done extensive research, I'm sure you have put many more things in your book, you know. So, what did you leave out, and why did you leave out, and what did the editors cut?
Okay. This is a funny thing. I wanted it in the book, but there's a story of Jane Sherman, a dancer from the famous Denishon troupe. And she had a really rough time traveling across India. They came, I think, in February, and they were here till May. So she was really struggling. And when she took the boat mail, that's the train that
I want to
goes.
know about that, please.
I'll
Yeah.
tell you about that. Yeah, she took the boat mail was a train that would go from Egmore station in what was then
Chennai, yeah.
Madras, and it would go up to Dhanushkodi, and then you take a ferry to to Talemanar in Sri Lanka, and then a train that would go all the way to Colombo. So you could buy a ticket. The boat mail still exists, but now it only goes up to Rameshwaram. So she traveled by the boat mail. They stopped in Madurai. When she got onto the Sri Lankan wing of she was excited because the train was slightly better until she saw cockroaches. And my editor said, "That's too gross. We have to leave it out." I said, "Come on." He said, "No, no, no. It's just too disgusting." So there were these little anecdotes which I found funny, and he said, "Oh, we can't do this." But that was one that stood out, and there were so many other funny things about Gandhi that I wanted to put there. I said, okay, it's okay. No, don't overdo it. But I had to restrain, and then of course the word limits. They said, oh, we can't publish such a big book. No one's going to read. So I had to kind of restrain myself.
So, you were in Colombo and you were doing the research and you wrote about that steamship journeys, you know, the old journeys.
Right.
So, how much of those areas, those stories remains in Sri Lanka, and how much have it changed? What is it now? There's no would
See,
cruise liners stay?
no,
What is it?
there is a ferry service from Nagapatnam that goes up to near Jaffna. So if you have an Indian passport, you don't need a visa for that. You can just go with your passport and you'll get a 30-day stamp. But the boat mail, like I said, doesn't exist anymore. But there's so many stories of people who took them. So when I wrote an article on the website of scroll.in, again, people came out with their stories, and these are from living memories, so probably not myths. But right now they want to restart that Rameshwaram to Talemanar ferry service, because right till 1983, when the ethnic conflict really turned into a civil war.
And the economic crisis that happened.
See, the economic crisis was, I was there when that happened, and I saw huge queues for diesel, for petrol. There were 13-hour power cuts. But, at the end of the day, the country has recovered in many ways from it. You got rid of an absolutely horrible regime, and people stood up. The one good thing about that crisis was people suddenly stopped being Sinhala, Tamil, Muslim, Burger, or whatever, and the way people rose up together to get rid of those despots, that was, hats off to them for that. But what I've noticed since then is prices went up so much, everything costs 5 times as much, 6 times as much, and we have the currency advantage with our rupee, so we don't feel it so much. Or now that the rupee is, depreciating here, we may at some point. But then, for somebody who's from an economically backward section of society, it's incredibly difficult. You see, I mean, these are ridiculous prices, the inflation. So there hasn't been a full recovery, but there is a lot more positivity now. And at this point of time, I feel that they're on the right track. And one good thing was just getting rid of that communal monster that was there in society when the young people rose up. I'm really proud of them for that. You do have people who want to some political monks and stuff who want to kind of bring back majoritarian politics, but difficult now. But I'm glad that you see a lot more Sinhala Tamil marriages, and so those kind of changes are clearly visible for that Sri Lankan identity, which is very important.
I was also wanting to know about that Colombo is a port city then and now. How is the grandeur of the port is still there? Like,
Okay, so the port
yeah,
doesn't
if you
look
can
like
read
this
about it.
anymore. But, there's this wonderful hotel called the Grand Oriental. One of the claimants to, they even have a Chekhov suite, room I think 301, with paintings of Saltykov. And ironically, there's a plaque there where they mentioned Chekhov wrote his novel Gusev there. Gusev was not a
It's
novel.
a story.
And it was by the Sri Lanka Russia Friendship Society. I'm like, guys, what is going on? I mean, seriously. But okay, so from that hotel, you can see a big flyover which is coming from the airport. So that beautiful view would be a great, you know, idea to have a sundowner sit on their top floor and look at the port and enjoy it. That view is destroyed. What? See, the thing is, until the end of the Civil War, a lot of places still looked the way they did from time of writing because there wasn't much construction on Golf Face Green and stuff. Now, a whole lot of skyscrapers have come up.
Okay.
That Lotus Tower, which during the time of the crisis, people were calling it a torch. And there are many other, there's a project called Port City. And that has completely, it's changed the face of Colombo because there's land reclamation. They want to make a Dubai, Singapore, thing out there. And the problem is, not only is it an eyesore at the moment, who knows, maybe when it comes up, it'll just stand out. I don't know. But there's a place called Mount Lavinia that I mentioned in this book, and
Yes,
some people
yes.
here have told me they've stayed there. And it was one of the best inner city beaches in the world. You could just go for a swim. The waters are so clean. And now even a good swimmer like me finds it difficult because of the way the waves are messed up. But having said all that, you still see plenty of beautiful, gracious old bungalows. They're still around. There's so many places where the skyscraper boom hasn't come. They've preserved a lot of things well. The Dutch heritage is preserved really well within the fort area. I hope that those buildings won't get torn down. But yes, I mean, there's a lot to appreciate. And also the language, there's an elegance in the way English is spoken in Sri Lanka. It's my second favorite accent. I would say after the Irish accent, the Sinhalese accent is the most.
Tell us something about it.
I'm not going to imitate people. They'll get angry at me. This is on YouTube. Right? Michael has a bit of a Sri Lankan accent, so you can talk to him. But, but no, yes, because when I met him, I thought I started speaking to him in Sinhala because I thought, okay, are you? He said, no, I'm Tamil. I said, okay, we can speak Tamil. But I remember once while going for immigration passport control at Bandaranaike Airport, and said there was a queue for Sri Lankan citizens, and a border guard said, "No, you can go." I said, "May I?" But for Sri Lankans, they said, "You may proceed." And then I was like, "Oh, nice! Not you may go or go ahead or something like that. You may proceed." And I like that old world elegance in the way the language is spoken. And there are these other, see, my nephews going for their music class and seeing the kind of respect they had for their teachers. I mean, it was beautiful to see that. I think one thing they really got right in 1948 when they became independent was they ensured universal health care and education, so the literacy rates are really high. And you don't have to worry about going bankrupt if you fall sick there. The government hospitals are in good shape. You can actually go for treatment there. So yeah, when it comes to heritage, yes, they have in many ways preserved it in a good way.
Nice. I think that after crisis, that Sri Lankan nationalism has been fortified, like how you said, no?
Not, I wouldn't say nationalism has been fortified. What I'm saying is there is a lot more unity within the country. But see, when Sri Lanka loses a cricket match, they laugh at their team. You don't turn into a vandal. I watched a match in Pallikale near Kandy, a T20, an India Sri Lanka match. And I had my Sri Lanka jersey on and just having fun trolling the Indian players for fun. They use an Indian in a Sri Lankan jersey. And Sri Lanka should have won that match. They choked. But the crowd, they were just making fun. And they said, okay, we're all Indians anyway. And and they were shouting India, India. I was like, they just had fun. They said okay, and they were, in fact, when it went into what's called a super over, so everybody started booing, and but they can laugh at themselves, and that's a sign of confidence. We
Yes.
need to be able to laugh at ourselves. Why not?
Totally, totally. So, hey, I think we've got 10 more minutes. I think we should open up to the public if they have any
Any questions?
yeah, observations, questions. Maybe Brian wants to go to Colombo.
Any questions? We have some time if anyone wants to ask.
I wanted to congratulate you on this delightful session, both of you.
Thank you.
And this really was, as a person who's been to Sri Lanka, both in the 1980s, early 1980s, and in 2000s, 40 years apart, on the 30 years apart at least. I think what was, I wanted to know how, have you seen the Sri Lanka from before, after, and what was your impression?
Confession. First time I went was in 2003. I've seen the changes. I've seen, especially after 2009, when a lot of construction came up and the road network was upgraded. Because from 83 onwards till 2009, they spent 25% of their GDP on the war, unfortunately. So I've seen the changes. I've only seen photographs of how beautiful the country was in the 80s and the 70s and videos, and I hear descriptions. Even my family that I'm very close to, it was much better before 1975, before the liberalization, says the father. The son says, no, everything got better then. So, it's a mixed bag on how people look at it, but then you can't just not look at those photos and think that it was quite a charming place at that time.
Could I know why this Sri Lankan fascination for Chekhov, besides the fact that he visited the place? Was there any special interaction between people and the writer?
Okay, so a couple of things. One is they have bragging rights. That's the only place in South Asia where Chekhov went to. He said, Sachi mentioned Sakhalin Island where I lived. Chekhov went there on a medical mission, and he wrote to his publisher Suvorin. He said, Ceylon is paradise. I have seen hell, and that's Sakhalin, and Ceylon is paradise. So they love, that's validation. The great Chekhov called Ceylon paradise, and his interactions with people, he did buy more than one mongoose, which he took back with him. He also, he showed off about sleeping with bronze-skinned Indian women. For them, the Indian was considered the ethnicity. So he showed off about that, and he said, I will tell my grandchildren, you bastards, I've slept with beautiful bronze-skinned Indian women. So they're proud of that fact. The same thing with Bradman, right? I mean, Don Bradman did not play in any other place in South Asia, only in Sri Lanka. So these are things to feel good about. But of course, Chekhov's short stories have been translated into Sinhala, into Tamil, and they're popular plays. I've seen Three Sisters in Sinhala. I've seen The Seagull in Sinhala, and they're delightfully done. They've adapted it a little bit to local settings and stuff, but it's beautifully produced.
Lovely session, guys.
Thank you.
Congrats. So, Ajay, like we spoke yesterday evening, I've been to Lanka twice. Once as a schoolboy, and then quite in 2019 for a triathlon. But the point is, the question to you was, what is it behind that Joy de Vivre? Because you've gone there so many more times than us. About the Lankans, how do they smile so easily, and why are they so soft-spoken? They're not. At least I have not seen an aggressive Lankan.
Oh, there are plenty of aggressive people there, trust me. This is an island which has had all kinds of violent riots and insurrections, and you provoke them, you'll see another side. I will say that, but in general, I think a lot of it has to do with this concept of meditating, and not everybody does, but generally I think the climate is conducive to that. It's not a crowded place. So there are a lot of factors into this. I mean, people say it's because of Buddhism. I have issues with that, saying that it's just because of that. But There are many reasons. I think the culture, even the language, it's a really sweet language. Very few people learn it from India, especially. And then you say something in Sinhala, they're like, India bhi Sinhala. They go completely, they lose their mind, they're thrilled. But generally, these traditions and Indian people of an older generation who have visited Sri Lanka said, you know what, India used to be like this as well at one point. That we also used to have people who smile like this at each other, and especially it may still be the case in smaller towns, but I mean, I don't. Well, I smile at people in Bombay. Not everybody smiles back at me. Some people do. Some people think I'm crazy.
Supplementary question. Sorry. Oh, sorry. No,
I can hear him though. Yeah. All right. Okay.
So, as he's been kind enough to give it back to
Uh-huh.
given you a dark microphone, so don't I forgot the question now.
You,
Yeah.
something about smiles.
Yeah. No. Yeah, language. See, now Malayalam.
Yes.
And we were discussing how Sinhala and Malayalam. Malayalam is closest to Sinhala.
No, it's not. In fact, there's so many common words with Konkani, like Bappa, like Amba, in Amba and Sinhala. So it's an Indo-European language. The structure is like that, but it's a Tamil syntax. So for example, there's no gender with nouns. So Mage Puta, my son, and so the point is you don't have. It's much easier for us to learn because there's so many Sanskrit words, but it's much closer, I would say, to Hindi, to Konkani, to Marathi, and we say light gaya in Hindi, and they say light gaya in Sinhala. So you understand, like you say Colombo para, but they use words which we don't use commonly anymore, like parampara, aparada. You hear words like that every day, and then it's like, okay, these people speaking Sanskrit or what? It feels like that. But of course, that's also being killed with a lot more of English words, and unfortunately. But it's an easy language for us to learn, especially if you speak Hindi, if you speak Marathi, Konkani. Very easy language to learn, and it's appreciated a lot. I mean, you as a South Indian, because that's what I am, and if I make mistakes with Hindi, people say, "Oh, you're like Chatur from Three Idiots." But I can make the worst and most embarrassing mistakes in Sinhala, and people say that's okay. Hyundai, it's very nice. They're more tolerant of people making mistakes, even if they're cousins, as they consider Indians. Yeah.
So, thank you for this wonderful session, and thank you for the wonderful sunglasses.
This is his Sri Lankan Tamil act.
No, Talaiva, all power to you.
Talaivar.
But I've got a silly little question inspired by the Anton Chekhov stories, which are delicious. I was wondering about that other Farang writer with the initials AC, who was based in Sri Lanka for so long, Arthur C. Clarke.
Right.
So what's his reception? If the Sri Lankans own Chekhov in these completely dubious ways, how has Arthur C. Clarke, who has been such a phenomenon in the West,
Right.
been
they very much own him. I didn't write about him in this book because he actually went to live there, and he didn't, he wasn't using it as a port of call, or he wasn't exiled there. But they very much own him as well. I mean, the thing is that taking ownership of foreign personalities, if they show any of us, if we show appreciation for the culture out there and we try and blend in, they love us there. I mean, it's such an open and welcoming society. They loved the cricket commentator Tony Gregg because the 1996 World Cup, he was like, "Oh, Sri Lanka's doing so well." I can't imitate him well, but his enthusiasm. So even if you go there, you make an attempt to learn the language, and they really, really appreciate that. And if someone lives there, like, "Oh, you want to live with us? How nice." That. Having said that, of course, it's not a place that's completely free of xenophobia. We know that there was a civil war, etc. But they generally are more accepting, and definitely. When I wear my Sri Lankan cricket jersey and stuff, they're thrilled. They're like, okay, it's something they really appreciate.
Are there any more questions? No?
Did you come across or did you meet some of the extremist monks? You know, it's the subject of Sonia Falero's book, The Robe and the Sword.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I have come across extremists there, not just monks. So it's very simple. Now, when I'm meeting someone new there, if say if the person is over 45 or something, for example, you have a casual conversation. I call it the 1983 test. So you just have to ask someone, what happened in 1983? If the person tells you there was communal violence and Tamils and Sinhalese were both equally hurt and it was a bad time, etc., I would avoid that person. Somebody tells me there was a pogrom of Tamil people, which it exactly was, and no one's been punished for it, then I know that this is an extremist. But I mean, I don't associate with people who say that who downplay what happened in '83 or the other anti-Tamil riots that took place, or at the end of the civil war what happened, which is absolutely deplorable. So this. So I have come across people. I've even met a Buddhist monk who said, actually, the Buddha was born in Sri Lanka. And when somebody says that, what do? You just, okay, listen and take it in one ear, let it out the other. You don't need to engage these kind of people. If you feel they may be misinformed about certain things, you can engage in conversation. Otherwise, I don't get into these arguments. I mean, I understand that there are people like that, but thankfully they're not in my inner circle, and none of my family members or anything close to that. Happy to see my friends from Peacock here. Okay.
Hi. Oh, sorry. Thanks for the talk. I really appreciate it. My question was more specific. I'm a big fan of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Right.
How exactly did he end up coming on that journey down to Colombo? And you mentioned that specific story about the mango seed. What was his general impression of of the people of South Asia?
So he loved the people of South Asia. In fact, I'll tell you, he was a spiritualist. He believed he could talk to dead people, and he gave talks about this. After losing his son, that was one of his ways of coping with the loss of his son, who fought in the First World War. So he went on to talk about spiritualism in Australia and New Zealand, and Colombo was the last port on that east-west highway before Australia. So it's just open sea from Colombo all the way to Fremantle. So he was there twice, on his way to Australia and New Zealand, and on his way back. And about South Asian people, he really enjoyed interacting with Indians on his ship. On his way, he specifically spoke about it. He was very sad when people got off the ship in Bombay, because Bombay was a port of call before Colombo, and he was quite sad about it. He expresses that. He loved the place. He loved the people. But the funny thing is, again, the Golf Face Hotel, if they watch this, I'll probably not be welcome there anymore. But they show off proudly about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. He was our guest. But he called it a den of robbers or something like that. That and the Mount Lavinia Hotel. Because it was so expensive that he felt it was a ripoff. He called them. So I mean, when people from there read this book, they may not be too flattered, but he had a genuine affection, and the landscapes and everything. He loved it. He really appreciated it, and you can read about it in the book. But he was very much, although he supported empire, he believed that if the British weren't in Bombay, the Pathans of the northwest frontier will come and just ransack the city. This was his belief. But then the personal affection that he showed was quite high.
We have time for.
We have time, another 8
one-
minutes or something, yeah.
I also want to ask.
Yes.
Now that as an author you wrote about Colombo, do you think that you found your direction to write about the political mapping, cultural anthropological, that kind of a style of your writing?
I don't know. I honestly, what I really want to do is to bring people together. And if we can find things from our past that unite us, I'm not saying erase the bad things, but let us look at what binds us, that unites us, and as a part of the human family. And I want to find more of these things to know that, hey, I have this in common with you. We have so much in common. Build that. You know, in 2026, my favorite book was written by the gentleman sitting over there, the girl from Fergana. And so I love that book so much because you just realize, wow, we're so connected in so many ways. And I feel inspired. I want to do things like that, where you do things that where people feel happy when they read this and they say, yeah, okay, great. I meet somebody from another country. Guess what? I know this about your country and we have this in common. And let's meet, build friendships like this. You know, and why, of course, you can't ignore bad things about history. And if there's something politically that bothers you, there are plenty of people who are more qualified to write about geopolitics. I do write for think tanks, but I try not to put something that would provoke people and, you know, make friendship, not war.
Then you want to speak about any future projects?
I don't know. I would like to write about China. I really love China. I don't know if that's safe. I guess it's safe to say it here. The Chinese people and the various cultures there feel. You know, I would love to write about China, to spend more time in China, and also people tell me I haven't written enough about Russia, that I need to write more, and so I would love to do that, and of course just learn more languages, find more things in common, and you know, do things to just build.
Well, all the best to that.
Thank you. Do we have
I
time
think-
for any questions?
We do, we do.
Okay.
Yeah, we have time. There's Ajay, I wanted to quickly ask you, has there been any documentation of the Sinhalese version of Chekhov's plays that you mentioned, of how they interpret the plays? Or have you written about it in
I
the
haven't
book?
written about it, but there's plenty of material in Sinhala, plenty of it, you know. But then you have to be able to read and write. I mean, to read it, to at least to understand that. But it's something that they're proud of, like I mentioned. 5 minutes left, so we can take another couple of questions. And thank all of you for coming. I didn't expect more than 5 people here, to be honest.
Ajay, I don't know if you know about the connections between Sinhala and Goa, which is that at the in the early modern period, in the 17th century, I believe, a number of closet missionaries from Goa, including Jose Vaz, who is the patron saint of, but also
We
from,
spoke about that.
also from my island, there's someone whose name is Jacome Gonsalves, who's remembered as one of the fathers of Sinhala song and Sinhala literature, because he brought the Sinhala into the modern kind of. And there's another person who came from Asagao, whose name was Armand de Souza, who is credited as one of the fathers of Sinhala national consciousness. This
Wow.
is in the 20th century. Please look up these two.
I will look these up. Thank you for that insight. We did speak about Father Joseph Vaz, but I didn't know about these. Thank you so much.
Overlapping of all the cultures.
Exactly.
Okay, I think we can stop here. Thank you so much.
Right. Can
Nilankur,
we get a
Ajay.
photograph with Vivek in the book, and the three of us? I mean, I have to prove I was with you, right, Vivek?